Joining me now is our U.S. Report regular, former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, so glad to have you back here after a couple of weeks, and I want to get your thoughts, first of all, on Trump's big CNN town hall. What did you make of it?
James, it's great to see you. It's been too long. A lot of things happening here, obviously. I thought he did great if the goal was to win the Republican primary. I thought he did very poorly if the goal was to be president again. He satisfied his crowd. It was a crowd of Trump faithful. He gave them all the greatest hits. It's sort of like going to watch the Rolling Stones in concert. You know exactly what you're going to get, and they're pretty darn good at it. But there's not a lot of new people listening to the Rolling Stones that haven't been listening to them for the last 60 years. And that's sort of the impression I got, was that he did not do a single thing last night, James, I don't think, to add to this voting base that he needs in 2024 to win the election. So if the goal was to win the Republican primary, good for him. If the goal is to be president, I don't think it was a very good night.
Yeah, look, and I think I take your point very much. But want to ask you this question, though. If you're a voter out there and you watch that performance, do you think, Joe, they're going to be thinking in their minds, well, Donald Trump was able to do this performance, but could Joe Biden do a similar thing? Could Joe Biden, get up, get in front of a crowd, take spontaneous questions to the extent they were spontaneous? And do you think that's going to start to play on people's minds?
It absolutely is. You're already seeing in the polling data, a majority of people, there's a big national poll out last week, a majority of people question Biden's mental and physical ability to do the job. So they're already asking that question. In fact, I think Joe Biden, I don't know if the news has made its way down to Australia yet tonight or not, but had a major gaffe today on Irish, American, and British relations when he actually went off script in a private conversation. And it's going to take 6 months to probably undo the damage that Biden did there. No, Biden is much, much worse than Trump when it comes to being able to debate and campaign. The question is, if Trump is the nominee, will the American people face a choice between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, or will they look at this as a referendum on Donald Trump? Donald Trump did that to himself in 2020. He made the election about him. People did not vote for Joe Biden. They either voted for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump. So, yeah, can Trump beat Biden? Absolutely. Can Trump beat himself? 100%.
And do you think that it's just interesting, obviously, that the left is now furious that CNN has given Trump a platform on this for fairly obvious reasons? But I also saw in all of this, the moderator of this, she seemed to make it kind of a debate between her and Trump. Do you think that was a wise strategy?
No, face it. I know Caitlin Collins. She's a good reporter, but I mean, she's a left-leaning personality, and she has a lot of friends who are left-leaning. And she had to go home that night and face all of her friends on social media. She's going to have to go to her cocktail parties in Washington, D.C. this weekend and defend herself to her liberal friends. So, yeah, did she make herself part of the story? She absolutely did. Did Trump invite it and sort of encourage it? Yes, he absolutely did. There's no question about that. It is a secondary story, I think, to the larger issue of whether or not Trump did a good job and was successful. But certainly, Caitlin Collins struggled under very, very difficult circumstances.
And I want to switch gears now, Mick, to this whole story around this investigation of the president, the family's finances, the Biden family, these essentially Chinese government front groups that may have been funneling money into the family, and now news that the FBI has refused to give Congress an informant file alleging that the president took bribes while he was vice president. Do you think something smells here, or is this standard business between the Congress and the FBI, or is this a potential constitutional crisis in the making?
I think it's probably the latter. Keep in mind, by denying Congress the document, what the FBI essentially did today was admit that it exists. And they said, I think they claimed that it was a confidential document and that therefore it's not able to be given to the Congress. I can assure you, having been in Congress, they are going to disagree with that. They don't believe that any confidentiality requirements internal to the FBI would prevent Congress from doing its constitutional duty. So no, there is going to be a constitutional challenge. I think that's correct. But the whole thing does smell. It's a lot of money to a family that doesn't have any experience in the things they apparently got paid for. There's a lot of smoke. Now, that being said, there's no fire yet. There's no hard evidence. There's just a bunch of questions that are going to go unanswered right now. But there's no evidence that Biden actually did anything illegal. There's no evidence that this was at all illegal. But it really, really looks bad for the president and his family, and it certainly bears further investigation. And that's exactly what the Republicans in the House are going to do.
Well, Mick, you and I are both students of modern American presidential history, and I was saying to my panel earlier tonight that this feels a lot like when they used to ask about Richard Nixon, what did the president know and when did he know it? But it seems like there's a real lack of curiosity among many members of the media about whether or not there is a direct link to the president. Right now, they seem to be taking the White House's word for it that, oh, well, no, there's not a direct link, so it doesn't affect the president.
And that's one of the real sad parts about the status of our republic right now, is that the media, which is supposed to hold both parties, all parties accountable, they're supposed to be the sort of that public light that shines upon the government. They're not doing that. I mean, if this had been Donald Trump, they'd be all over it, as we say in the southern part of the states, like a hobo on a ham sandwich. They couldn't let it go. Okay, but since it's their guy, since it's the person from their party, since it's their chosen candidate, they choose to look the other way and instead attack, Congressman Comer, the head of the investigation committee, for personal attacks on the president and so forth. So no, it really is sad. By the way, the other thing we learned from Watergate was also to follow the money. And that, I think, is exactly what they're going to be doing. They're going to follow this money, find out where it came from and where it goes. And again, I have full confidence that the Republicans in the House are going to maintain this investigation, despite the pushback they get from the FBI and the lack of cooperation from the mainstream press.
Finally, Mick, before I let you go, I want to ask you about California Senator Dianne Feinstein. We saw her this week arriving at the Capitol in a wheelchair in photos following her nearly 3 months absence, they said, because of shingles, which, of course, is a terrible thing to suffer. There are calls for her to retire. Why are the Democrats continuing to let her stay in this seat?
Well, it's really hard to sort of push out one of the grand dames of the Senate. I mean, Dianne Feinstein is an institution, not only in the Senate, but especially in the Democrat Party, and most especially in the Democrat Party in California. No Democrat in that state wants to be perceived as pushing this groundbreaking, this iconic woman out of office. But I've dealt with dementia in my family. I don't know if you have or not. The things I'm hearing about Dianne's condition are not particularly good. It's quickly going to come to a time where they're going to have to decide, do they want 2 senators in California, or are they just going to rely on 1? Because I'm not sure right now that she's up to the job based upon what I'm hearing here in Washington, D.C. It's sad to say, and again, I take no joy from that, having been through dementia myself and my family. But this is a serious job. California's an important state. Every state's important. They need 2 senators, and I'm not sure she's up to the job right now.
Indeed, Mick, it is indeed very sad, but thank you so much for your time, and look forward to speaking again soon.